Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been a varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Currently, my daughter and I are coaching one of the best AAU teams in the country. Piston fans, free agency is upon us. Things are going to be happening. We're going to talk today about Cam Johnson versus Harrison Barnes. We're going to talk about Ausar Thompson. Is he the next Scottie Pippen? And also, it's going to be challenging where there's a lot of teams that are looking to improve this year, and it's not going to be easy, but we're going to dive into that a little bit. But first, we're going to start out with Cameron Johnson. So I like Cameron Johnson. He is a perfect fit for our team. I don't think that we're necessarily, this isn't the year that we are jumping in to be all in to win. I think we're going to win. Again, I'll repeat this every episode. I think we're going to win, 15 wins more than last year. And it could be more than that. It could be a little bit less, but, it could be, who knows. But not most teams never win 20 wins more, improve 20 wins. But we could. We certainly could, especially if we got Cameron Johnson. So Cameron Johnson's 27, so he's old for our timeline a little bit, but not bad. He's better than Jeremy Grant. And again, I really do think Jeremy Grant, there's like a 95% chance he's going to re-sign with Portland. So my proposal for Cameron Johnson is, so what you got to do is you got to try to construct a contract that will, discourage the Nets from re-signing him. So I'm thinking like if we signed him for the first 2 years, $30 million each for the first 2 years and $25 million for the last 2 years, and that would go to $110 million. So I think that's an overpay, which is what we would have to do to get him. We would have to overpay to discourage the Nets. The other thing I talked about is sign and trade. So it's interesting. I like to go back to different franchises and listen to the podcast. Like there's the Lockdown Network. They have a team person that covers every team in every sport. And so I went back and listened to the Nets. I think it was even like on June the 2nd, and they were talking about the fact that we hired Monty Williams. We might be getting or going in to get Cameron Johnson because, again, they loved each other. Monty cried the day that they traded him and Mikal Bridges, and by all accounts, Cameron Johnson loves Monty Williams too. So that heightened the interest in me for getting that player. And I think that Monty's love, and he could convey to Troy everything about his injury history, which is a concern. He's only averages like 56 games a year. But he's 27, so I'm a little bit less concerned about injuries because he's younger. But still, it's a concern. But then I think that Monty would have a real good insight into his injury history and everything about that. And obviously, before we would ever sign him a contract, we would have to do a thorough physical and see what's there. But I think that by front-loading the contract, that might discourage the Nets. And also, it would be better for us because, later, when the new TV agreement is signed, I don't know how many years it's coming soon, that the salary cap's going to jump way up. And so then that contract, even at $25 million, is not going to look bad at all. And again, he is like a role player, but he's going to be an outstanding role player. He's 6'8", he can shoot the three, and he's a really good defender. So, but the Lockdown Nets, they were talking about it, and they said, yeah, we could maybe do a sign and trade with the Pistons, but yeah, they would never trade Bojan Bogdanovic, and because he's worth so much, he's such a good player that they would probably be able to get. They probably could have gotten 2 first-round picks at the trade deadline. Well, I don't think we could have. And I think that we would trade him if we could get, just because he's younger and he's a better defender. So, again, we're not in it to win it this year, but I think we would take a step. So here's the difference. Harrison Barnes, great player, 31 years old, 4 years older. Players are they're not as good when they're 30. So they're like, I heard a thing today that they said that on teams that win the championship in the last 10 years, no team had their 2 best players were over 30. And so that doesn't really exactly apply to Harrison Barnes because, again, he would be a role player. And so you can have role players that are 31 on your team. It's not a big deal. But it's just the difference is there is a a decline. You're not as good. You're not as quick. You're not as fast as you get older, and so it makes a difference. So Harrison Barnes, I would even offer him like less money, $23 million each for 3 years with a team option for the third year. So that would be significantly less money, and I think there would be a real world where he would accept that deal. And the thing is I don't want him even for that deal, even though he's an excellent player. It's just that we have, so he's, he's like a 3-4, but we have Bogey that plays forward, Ausar, Livers, Stewart, Bagley, Wiseman, Duran, and I know some of them play the 5, and they, but anyway, they're forwards, but there's just not enough minutes. So even if we added Cameron Johnson, there's still going to be, somebody's going to take less minutes. So that's why, if we did get Cameron Johnson, we would definitely, I think, in my opinion, want to unload Bogey. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens, but there still is a lot of momentum. Sounds like, at least in the air about the Pistons going after. There's, again, insiders, Mark Stein, reported that the Pistons were very interested. And I think the fact that we have Monty, that just really makes it a real thing that we would go after him. But like I said, the Nets can match. So that's, no matter how bad we want him, if the Nets want to match, but if we put the number up there and overpay him, there's a chance. But I do like the roll of the dice here because especially if we front-loaded the contract, so when we get in the last 2 years of the contract, we were paying him less because we got to re-sign Cade and all those other guys when they get their rookie extension, and we want to also be able to make another move. So that's why I'm not concerned if we don't make a move in free agency. It wouldn't be a big deal because we want to make the big move next year for the right player at the right price. So there's not a great free agency market. Cameron Johnson does fit the team, but he's, it would be an overpay to pay him $110 million for 4 years, but that's what you have to do in free agency. So anyway, there were some rumors about us trying to get DeAndre Hunter, and he's a 6'8" forward for Atlanta. He's been injured off and on. He's only 25 years old. He averaged over 15 points, 4 rebounds, shot 46%, 35% on threes, 83% from free throws. He's supposed to be a good defender, and he's, like I said, he's 6'8", 210 pounds or so. He's a good player, but he's not been quite as good as they thought he was going to be. But he's under contract for a bunch more years, so that makes him, at his young age, 25, it would make him a pretty good fit for the Pistons. So he makes like $25 million right now. That's what his contract is in the last year of his contract. So, he has 4 years left. He's a good defender. He has in 26, 27, he'll be making $24 million. So another guy that I love Austin Reeves. He's a guard that plays for the Lakers, and they're in a conundrum with their money and their salary cap, and so there's a lot of speculation that they can match. They still can match, but do they want to? If the offer gets so high, somebody could send a ridiculous offer. I just don't think it's us, even though I love him. I love him as a player, but we're going to talk about minutes here in a little bit. When you divvy up the minutes for players, where are the minutes for Austin Reeves? You'd have to almost get rid of somebody, and it just makes things complicated. Just like I said, at the forward position, we're loaded at the forward position. If we sign somebody like that, Livers is going to get no minutes. There's no minutes. We just signed Livers. We took his option. We accepted his option, so we're going to pay him like $1.8 million, which is nothing. So we're going to keep him on the team. He's a great guy to have on the team. He's a great connector of people. He's a great defender. He talks. He's smart. I think he'd be solid to have on our team, and it's a bargain. It's at the price he has. It's unfortunate that last year was his big chance to show what he can do, and then he was injured, just like he was injured when we drafted him. Another thing that I think is interesting, I just want to throw this out there, is you see, I don't like when sometimes people say, oh yeah, this team always takes this kind of player, or this team takes that kind of player, so they're always going to draft that kind of player. But anyway, Troy has shown the propensity to draft in the later first round or the in the second round. He takes older players. So like he took Luka Garza, but he took Livers, that's an older player, and now he took Marcus Sasser, who is a 4-year college player. And so that does seem to be a trend. And it makes some sense. When you're drafting that late, you're going to get somebody with more experience that's more ready to play and capable of playing a role. Next thing I want to talk about that I'm really excited about is Ausar Thompson. Is he the next Scottie Pippen? I watched all those battles with the Pistons and the Bulls and Scottie Pippen when, Jordan did not win a championship without Scottie Pippen. So there's so many similarities between Ausar Thompson and Scottie Pippen. Pippen 6'8", 210, Ausar 6'7", and about 210. And they both pass the ball really great. They're both great athletes. And they both can drive and kick. But they both are just tremendous defenders. And that's one of the reasons why the Bulls are so great. Jordan and Pippen were unbelievable defenders on the wings. And so I just think that Ausar has some similarities. Pippen for his career averaged 16 points, 6.4 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 47% from the floor, and 33% on threes. So we know that Ausar's big Achilles heel right now is his shooting, and even his percentage was not good coming out of Overtime Elite, and he really jacked those percentages up in the playoffs at the end. He had, like, 4 games, he shot over like 50%. And so, that could be said. You could also look at it that he was improving, and so by the end that, that could carry over and that he could after those 4 games. But he's a lot like Scottie Pippen, and those kind of players are just good players. But he's not like Hami. So there is some comparisons about Hami. Well, Ausar is bigger than Hami. Their athleticism is pretty similar, but Hami could not pass. Hami did not pass, and Ausar is a special passer. I just want to say that the Pistons, I'm so excited to watch them play because we have Cade, Ivy, Duran, and Ausar, who are outstanding passers. We should have such great ball movement, and so even though we don't have the greatest shooters, and I do anticipate Cade and Ivy are going to shoot definitely above 35. Maybe not a lot above 35. I hope Stewart shoots 35, but they're going to get open looks. And players, again, they get way more open looks. They shoot way higher percentage on open looks and it just makes sense than contested shots. So I think we're going to be getting lots of open looks because we're going to have such great ball movement, which we didn't last year. We had guys that would, guys like Sadiq and those guys, they dribbled the ball into the ground, and you don't get good shots off those. So, and Kojo, he dribbled more than anybody in the NBA. So, another thing I just want to mention is I'm excited about our 2 rookies, that not just Ausar, but Marcus Sasser. So, one of the big problems last year, if you watch the games, it was like teams in the half court would have like a layup line, and teams now, the NBA's changed. So, one of the reasons I think the big keys to why there's scoring has increased in the NBA is obviously players are getting more and more skilled and more talented offensively. There's some theory that they're not allowing people to be as physical guarding their man, but I just see that the court is so much more open because people are afraid of leaving a three-point shooter, and so that's why it's so important to have three-point shooters. But that creates a lot of driving lanes, and we were horrible at stopping the drive, especially, we would have Bogey out there and Sadiq and even Ivy. Ivy's gifted, and Ivy is a freak athlete, but his man went by him. He didn't close out right. Ivy would go towards his man so hard, and he'd be hustling all over the place. He'd be running all over the place real fast, but when you're running at a man fast, then they can blow by you, and he got blown by a lot, but Sadiq got blown by and Bogey got blown by because they're just not athletic enough. So, but I think Ausar and Sasser are going to really make a difference. I think they're really going to be able to keep, maybe not at first, but they're going to be able to keep their man in front of them, and so that's going to make our defense so much better. There is a difference, though. I talked about Pippen, and he shot 32% or whatever, and but the NBA has changed since Scottie Pippen played, and so there's a real comparisons, I think, in a lot of ways, and they both have a lot of the same positive attributes. But the three-point shot is much more important in the NBA today than it was when Scottie Pippen played, and there were way more shots taken, way more threes taken today than back then. So that makes it so he's going to want to be able to shoot the three better. So like I said, I looked at Scottie Pippen's numbers. I told you those, and his rookie numbers was only 21 minutes, and he averaged 8 points, 2 assists, and 3.8 rebounds. His second year, he jumped to 14.4 points, played 33 minutes, 2 steals, 3.5 assists, and so that's why you got to be patient a little bit. Scottie came from a small college, Arkansas Little Rock, I think it might have been. I'm not positive now, but I seem like I remember that. But that was a great draft pick, and he changed their franchise. And I think that, again, Ausar has a lot of the same gifts that Scottie had when you had him and Michael that could both break down defenses and pass. And so guys like Paxson or B.J. Armstrong, they were always wide open. B.J. Armstrong, wasn't that even a fantastic shooter, but he led the NBA in three-point shot shooting because Pippen and Jordan were always driving, and so they left him wide open in the corner, and so he knocked him down. But yeah, I think that those two guys are going to really improve our defense. And like I said, when you can't leave shooters, then the drive is going to be there, and that's going to help us with if we can shoot the three a little bit. But I think our passing, I think we're going to be able to drive, kick, and then the next guy's going to be able to drive too. So, and I'm going to repeat this: we have, I think, 4 great passers, and I've watched basketball a long time, and when you have 4 great passers on the court at the same time, your offense is going to run really well. And I don't think most teams, they're young, and so they're going to have to improve, but we'll see what happens. So I talked about the forward rotation a little bit, and so this is the thing. People think, oh yeah, let's get this guy, let's get Austin Reeves. Well, here's the thing. So the guard rotation is Cade Cunningham. He's got to play at least 32 minutes. So I looked it up. Booker played 36 minutes a game, and Durant played 34 minutes a game. Cade didn't average that many minutes, but I think we're going to want Cade to play about 32 minutes. I mean, obviously not maybe every day, but a lot of games. And then if Ivy deserves and should play like 32 minutes. And so if you got the 2 guard spots, 32 plus 32 is 64. That leaves 32 minutes for all the rest of the guards on your roster. So everybody's talking about, let's get this guard, let's get this guard. We can still have Killian, and we got Sasser, and we got Burks. And Burks is a really good NBA player, So I was mad last year that Dwayne Casey only played him 20 minutes a game, and his percentages were off the charts. I mean, he shot just as good as Bogey, but he just played less minutes. So I don't know what they're going to do, because so that means if they played Cade 32 and they played Ivy 32, that means there's 16 minutes left for Burks and 16 minutes left for Sasser. And it's not enough for Burks, so that means 12 minutes for Sasser and 20 minutes for Burks. But Monty's got to figure that out. He is going to have a challenge. We got hurt by injuries last year. I still contend that we got off to that bad start, and a big part of that was because Bagley and Burks were injured, and our bench got annihilated every game. And now, if we have most of the guys healthy, and we do have more players, I think that we will certainly be able to overcome injuries better. So, yeah, it's not easy. And then the same thing, like I said, with shots. There's only so many shots to go around. Everybody can't, there's times when Cade played, he averaged over 20, and Bogey averaged over 20. And, I think when Cade was out at the end of the year, and then we were sitting out Bogey, Ivy could average about 20, but they didn't all play together. So there's only so many shots. So we have to have some role players. I do think that Cameron Johnson could be, he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands. He can spot up, and I think he's going to get a lot of open looks. Next thing I want to talk about is everybody, and is so excited about this team. They were last year too. And it's just everybody thinks we're going to take this big jump and make the play-in game. And we could. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. But realistically, very few teams improve 15 games from one year to the next. Every year, one team does. So here's what I want you to look at real quick. So our Detroit Pistons won 17. So all of a sudden, if we win 15 more games than last year, that will be 32. But if we win 15 more games than we did last year, that means spread out around the rest of the NBA, people are going to have to lose 15 more games. So who's going to lose 15 more games? If you look at it, The Rockets and the Spurs, they only won 22 games. And the Rockets, they are loaded. They have $60 million in cap space, so they can add anybody they want and overpay. And then they drafted Ausar Thompson, and they drafted Cam Whitmore. And so they got, along with, Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. and Shagun, they're loaded, and they got a new coach. I think that's going to be real successful. So they're going to improve a lot. The Spurs got Victor. Still fascinated to me. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. That's just my prediction. I do think Victor will get voted into the All-Star game. I think he might. I still think he's probably going to only average like 18 to 20. I don't think he's going to just completely bust out, but I think, eventually he's going to be a dominant player, but we'll see what happens with that. But the Hornets, they averaged 27. They won 27 games last year, and they added a great shooter. They added Brandon Miller, and they had a whole bunch of injuries last year. And, LaMelo, he was injured half the year. And so if they get healthy and they add a few players, they're going to go up. The Magic, they won 34 games, and they started out the year like 5-15 or 5-20. And so after that, they did really well. And they did go down at the end, but they still won 34. So you would have to believe that they're going to win much more. So all these teams, every team that adds, every game you add to one of these teams that was losing, somebody else is going to have to lose games. And the NBA is just so balanced and so loaded. And so that's my point. The Pacers won 35. They sat out, some of their players a lot of their players at the end of the year. They tanked at the end of the year. Portland really tanked at the end of the year. They just completely shut down every player except for Shaedon Sharpe. And so they hardly won any games last year. And so they're for sure going to win. They're going for it. They talked to Damian Lillard. I still think they should have traded him, but they talked to him, and they're trying to win, but they hardly won any last year. So they because of the tank. So they're going to probably win a lot more. The Mavs tanked a little bit at the end. The Jazz tore it up. They got John Collins, and they got some good rookies, and they're going to be way better. And they won 37. Oklahoma City, I would project that they're going to win. They won 40 last year, and they're going to get Chet, and I forget even who they drafted this year, but they got some more good players. And so I anticipate they probably could win 50 games next year. And so again, every time a team wins one more game than they did, somebody else has got to lose a game. So I always say it's just like the people that go to the casino. They get really mad because they don't win, and they put their money in the machines and stuff, and they lose. But then there's that one person that wins 20,000, and for the casinos aren't going to lose money. Everybody that wins 20,000, that means all the other people, they spread it out, have to lose 20,000. Same thing with wins in basketball. But just wanted to talk a little bit about again, we've been talking about the NBA and the new collective bargaining agreement and how that's changing how teams operate. So John Collins has been rumored to be traded for the last 2 years. I wanted the Pistons to get him. He's 6'9". He's one of the few players that had like 63s and 60 dunks in a season, and he's athletic, and can shoot the three. He didn't shoot it well last year. He had a hand injury, but they traded him for nothing. They traded him for Rudy Gay, but they did it all because of trying to put themselves in place for the new collective bargaining and the salary cap, because Collins made $25 million a year and Rudy Gay made $6 million a year. So now they have the difference, between those two numbers that they have, left to mess around with and to sign players, or they have some space now. And so that's why they traded it. I'm sure they could have gotten a better player. I would have traded Bogdanovic for him if I thought I wanted a forward. I'm not so sure that he's not as good a shooter as Cameron Johnson. So maybe I still would take Cameron Johnson in. Again, I think a big part of us going after Cameron Johnson is because Monty loves him, and Troy always takes the person, and I think that Monty's going to tell him that he's like the greatest person in the world, and so then they're going to try to get him. But he's a better three-point shooter than Collins, but they're, I think, comparable. Collins is 25 and Cameron Johnson's 27. So he's younger, and he's signed for only $25 million a year. And like I said, I think that we're going to have to get an average over that to try to sign Cameron Johnson. So that will be interesting. But there's been some other moves. The Bradley Beal, they traded him for they took garbage for him. They traded Bradley Beal because they wanted to get off. He's going to make like $50 million a year. So they took on Chris Paul's contract that was terrible, and another guy's contract that was bad that the Suns wanted to get rid of. So the Suns got to get rid of two bad contracts, and that's what they gave up for Bradley Beal, who's an elite player that's borderline NBA All-Star. So, but all these things are happening because of the salary cap and teams trying to position themselves so they don't go way over the Supermax and the second apron and stuff like that. So it is just going to be fascinating what happens with free agency and all the deals that could be made. Like I said, I don't think I did talk about, there's this guy, I don't even know how to say his name. I should have checked, but it's like Yuta Watanabe, and he played for the Nets. He only played like 16 minutes a game, and he's 6'9", 28 years old. He averaged 5.6 points, 2.4 rebounds, shot 49% from the floor, and 44% on threes. So that's just going to be, I'm just talking about him as having a low-priced guy that can fill out the end of your bench, and if you get some injuries or you feel like you need a three-point shooter, then you can stick him in. But like I said, I think it's going to be a challenge for Monty Williams with our roster to divvy up the minutes. There are not enough minutes for the guys that we have, just even at the guard position and especially at the 4 and the 5, unless somebody proves that they can shoot the three. If Wiseman all of a sudden is a three-point shooter or Bagley's three-point shooter, that would make a difference. But then again, it's just like losses. Every minute you give to one player, you have to take the minutes away from somebody else. So that's why I think that this next year still should be a year where we look at what's going on around us and look at our team and where we're at and evaluate, win games, fight to win games. And I think it's going to be an exciting team. I think we're going to have, we got a lot of exciting players that are going to be really fun to watch. And anyway, so thanks for listening. I love my listeners. I appreciate every one of you. And I hope that you enjoy this podcast. Do something nice for somebody today. And if you can go on YouTube, please subscribe. It doesn't cost a penny to subscribe. You just have to click a button. You're not going to get in trouble, or there's not going to be people that are chasing you down if you subscribe, but it makes a difference for me. And if you are listening on Spotify, leave a 5-star review, and go Pistons.